everybody, it's John Lone King. Thank you for joining me every single Wednesday night between now and when the Dream for All lottery closes on March 16th. I will be hosting this webinar to guide you through how Dream for All works, teach you everything you need to know about the program, pros and cons, should you use it, should you not, and answer any questions that you have at all about the program. I want to make it really clear. My goal is to make this as interactive as possible. So the more questions that you ask, the happier I am, and the more likely I am to approve you. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but I do want to encourage you. I've got multiple platforms that people are watching this webinar on. So wherever you're at, post a comment right there. If you have questions, I'll be able to see it live. I'll be able to pull it up on the screen. I'll be able to answer your questions. There is no such thing as a silly question because really probably everybody else is thinking the same thing. And so I want to guide you and answer your questions. And this is a better call if we have lots of audience participation. So first and foremost, next week, what is happening next week? So on the 24th, which is 6 days from now, it is the beginning of the registration period. What that means is that you need to get your name into the lottery for this program. And the registration period only runs for 3 weeks. So it's running from Tuesday, the 24th of February through Monday, the 16th of March. You have from 8 a.m. on Tuesday, the 24th until 5 p.m. on Monday, the 16th of March. And at that moment, the lottery is closed. Now, some of you might be saying, John, this is my first time here. I'm not really clear what this whole lottery thing is about. So let me make it really clear. I'm actually going to share my screen. What you'll see up above right there is a link to my California Dream for All webpage. That is my page. And I'm going to share with you, I'm going to start by sharing with you the page that you're going to go to. So when you scan the QR code up here or type in the link up here, you're going to see this page. It's going to give you links to my blog, to my YouTube channel. You can click here to book a call with me. You can click here to go to my calculator, or you can click here to apply now. If you are ready to start the process, that's where you need to go. Why? Because you cannot get into the registration portal and complete your registration, which starts next Tuesday, until you have a pre-approval letter from a CalHFA-approved lender. So that is where I come in. I help you with the pre-approval. Then I help you with, once you have the voucher, then I help you with the funding of the loan. The only thing I don't help you with is finding the home. Your realtor does that, and you will need to find a realtor. I know realtors all up and down the state that are very familiar with this program, and it's critical that you work with a team that understands the program well. So I'm going to encourage you, if you don't already have a realtor that you like and trust, to reach out to me once it's time, and I'll help you to connect with a great real estate agent. So when you're here, if you click on the calculator, it will take you to my calculator where you can run some scenarios. You can create a free account. But once you are in here and you have your account, you're able to get to my FAQs. And my FAQs are where I'm at right here. So this is the FAQ page. And I'm going to use this tonight as kind of a different way to walk through what the heck is Dream for All and how all of this works. So how does Dream for All work? So first of all, it is a down payment assistance loan that provides you 20% of your purchase price up to $150,000 towards down payment. It's not a grant. It's not free money. As a matter of fact, it is the most expensive down payment assistance program that's out there in the long run. So I'm going to start by talking you out of it, which is there are way cheaper ways to buy a home. There's way less expensive ways in the long run to buy a home, but all of those ways have higher monthly payments. And so the key is, what can you afford in a monthly payment? And what's that going to buy you in a home? Is it going to get you into the neighborhood that you want? Is it going to get you the size or the quality or the condition of the home that you're looking for? All of those questions are critical, and those are questions that are answered as we start looking at the numbers and figuring out, what do I qualify for? So as we look at this, there are 0 monthly payments. That's fantastic, but you're paying back up to 2.5 times the amount of money that they gave you. They didn't give it to you, that they loaned you, because they are doing a shared appreciation loan. Now, here we're accentuating the positive by saying you keep 80% of your appreciation. But that's not like applause appreciation. That's the increase in value of the home from the day you buy it to the day that you pay back the state. Whatever it goes up, you're paying them back 20% of that amount. So you've got to recognize that if I used a different program, or if I used your own money, or went to bank of mom and dad and got down payment assistance from them, you get to keep 100% of the appreciation. In this case, you're only keeping 80. The state is getting 20% of your appreciation as their payback for investing in the home with you. So if you want to really think about it this way, you're taking on a partner. Now, that partner has no decision-making authority. Your partner in the state does not get to choose if you sell the house, or when you sell the house, or how much you sell it for, but they get 20% extra. They get what they loaned you plus 20% of how much the house value has gone up. So again, it's a pretty costly program, and they don't share in the cost of selling the home. So you sell a home and you make $100,000 because you bought it for $500,000 and you sell it for $600,000. So you made $100,000 on the sale. Well, guess what? You have to pay fees, commissions to sell the home. And so it might cost you, let's call it 5%. So that means it would cost you $30,000 to sell the home. But the state doesn't say, okay, I'll take 20% of the 100 minus the 30 it costs you to sell the home. The state says, no. I'm going to take 20% of the increase. You pay the fees out of your part. So the state gets 20 grand out of the 100,000 it went up. You pay 30,000 in fees for selling the home, which leaves you with 50 grand. But let's think about this. That's 50 grand more than you would have had if you were a renter. And along the way, you've got tax write-offs that you weren't going to get. You have the stability of knowing your landlord's not going to kick you out, or the home isn't going to get foreclosed upon. You have the equity that you are building, not just for the home value going up, but every time you make a monthly payment, part of that payment pays down your balance. That is money going into your pocket. So when you look at the increase in monthly payment, and yes, it is almost always an increase in monthly payment to go from being a renter to being a homeowner. And when you look at that increase in monthly payment, part of that increase you're going to recover because you're really taking money and putting it in your own pocket because it's paying down your balance. When you pay rent, you're not paying down your balance. You get 80% of the appreciation of the home value that goes up, and you get a great tax write-off. So if you don't know about how tax write-offs work, talk to your tax person this year when you're doing your taxes. If you don't use a tax person, use ChatGPT or Google it. But tax deductions can save you a lot of money depending upon your income and your tax situation. And so it's a really good opportunity to look at the positive aspects of this program. But to be really, really clear, there are negative aspects that it's going to cost you more in the long run. You can only refinance once without having to pay back the state. And there's a lot of fees on these loans. Like they're more expensive than the normal loan. And I'll go through all of that as we talk about some of the numbers, but I want to be really clear up front, and hopefully half of you go away. I'm joking, because I want you to know this program's great, but it's not perfect. There are negatives to it, but the trade-offs are like anything in life. There's no such thing as the perfect situation. There's no such thing as the perfect program that's going to give you everything that you need without having any negatives. So let's go through this and kind of talk more about it. What is the Dream for All program? So first of all, the Dream for All program is 20% of the purchase price up to $150,000 that you can use for down payment. You can also use it to help to pay for your closing costs. Now there's a trade-off here, because let's pretend you buy a $500,000 home. If you use it for down payment, then you're using all $100,000 for down payment. You're borrowing $400,000, which is great. You're only making a payment on $400,000 and you're paying zero mortgage insurance. Because normally when you put zero down payment, you have to pay for mortgage insurance. If you do any other of the down payment assistance programs, then on that $500,000 home, you might get 3% for down payment assistance, and you're making a payment on the other $485,000. So you're paying on a much higher balance, and there's mortgage insurance. With Dream for All, you don't have that, but you have closing costs, which average around 4% of the purchase price. Now, on a standard purchase transaction, without using Dream for All, you can expect to pay around 3% of the purchase price in closing costs. The Dream for All program is more expensive. It's very simple to understand why. Because banks get paid in two ways. We get paid by upfront fees, and we get paid by interest that we make over the life of the loan. The problem is with these down payment assistance programs, part of how they fund them is through recycling the interest they're earning over the life of the loan, because the state earns that interest. And so when you're doing a down payment assistance loan, the mortgage bank doesn't make money on interest over the life of the loan. We only make money from upfront fees. And the sad truth is, the only way that we can afford to do these programs is by charging a higher cost up front, because we're already making significantly less because we're not making any money over the life of the loan. Now, don't feel bad for us. We're happy to do it. It's a great program, but it means that a bank can't afford to do it for less fees up front because they're not making the money over the life of the loan like they normally would. It's economics, okay? So I just want to make that really clear that you can plan to spend around 4% of the purchase price towards closing costs. Now you might say, John, I don't have $20,000 to put towards closing costs. Or I have it, but that's all I have, and I want to have money left over for a rainy day. I totally agree. So you can take part of the $100,000 down payment assistance and apply it towards closing costs. But now you're not putting 20% down anymore, because even though I'm putting $100,000 down, that part of that's going towards closing costs. You're really only putting $80,000 down. And now you're going to have mortgage insurance. So you're now borrowing $520,000 on a home that is currently worth $500,000. You're upside down. If home prices don't go up, you're going to have a hard time refinancing down the road. So that's another thing that I want to make really clear. Again, super amazing program, but there's some negatives that you need to be aware of. And one of those is the difficulty of refinancing. If you're wrapping your closing costs into the loan, then you're borrowing more than what the house is worth. And normally when you refinance, the fees are pretty similar to when you purchased the home. A little bit less, but pretty similar. And so now you normally would be able to include those fees in the refinance without having to pay them out of pocket. But if you don't put any money as a down payment towards closing costs and you build that into the loan, now you really have to hope that the price of the home went up a fair amount before you refinance. So it can create a catch-22 that says it's great now because you got a great low payment, you got a zero money out of pocket, you don't even have to pay for closing costs, but then you say a year or two from now, hey, John, rates are lower, I want to refi. And now I'm saying, yeah, the only way you can is if you come out of pocket with some money. So it's something to be concerned about. Alex asked, what are the chances of the seller paying for the closing costs? Absolutely. So there's a couple of things I want to address here. Number one, the most a seller's allowed to pay is 3% towards the closing costs. Now, the good news is there's only 1% left over that would come from your pocket. So if you can negotiate a 3% seller credit, then you can just pay the closing costs yourself, because the seller's paying 3% and you're paying approximately 1%. Remember, it's rough numbers, but you're paying approximately the 1% towards the closing costs. The key is, you said, what are the chances of a seller paying for the closing costs? So the first answer I gave you is, what would I allow? The second answer is, can you get a seller to do it? And Alex, that's the key question that a lot of people are misjudging right now. Now, I'll tell you, the market has shifted. In the last year, we've gone from being a seller's market. Seller's market meant that sellers are in charge because there are more buyers than there are sellers. And so the seller gets to choose what price they're offering on it, listing it for. The seller's in control because there's lots more buyers trying to buy that home. And in a lot of markets, it's shifted. In a lot of markets, we are now more of a neutral, and in some cases, a buyer's market, where there are fewer buyers trying to buy more homes that are on the market. That gives you, the buyer, leverage. But you need to understand the bigger picture, because the bigger picture is more leverage does not mean no competition. And the sellers are looking at two things. They're looking at what is going to give me the highest amount of money in my pocket when I sell my home, combined with what is going to have the highest degree of confidence that it's going to successfully close the escrow. Those are the two things that most sellers are looking at. Now you'd say, John, how does that impact me? Well, when you ask for a seller credit, you're actually doing you're hurting yourself in both ways, because you are basically decreasing the amount of money the seller's going to get in their pocket. That makes you look worse than the other person who's not asking for it. But secondly, you're tipping your cards to say, I don't have money to pay my own closing costs. That may not be true, but the seller's going to think it. And so you have to look at there's kind of a few ways you want to look at this. When you're writing an offer on a home, psychologically, the seller wants to get their full price. And so if you can offer them full price, they're way more willing to give you seller credits. When you offer them a reduced price and you want seller credits, now the seller's going to feel like, oh my gosh, you cut me and now you're pouring salt in the wound. How dare you do that to me after offering me a lower price and now you're asking me for closing costs? So there's a lot of psychology as well as math behind it, Alex. And I'm an expert in kind of helping you and your realtor think through this. But the literal answer is yes, you can. It's a matter of the home that you're looking at, and can you actually negotiate with the seller to successfully get them to say yes while providing you with that seller credit? So it's a fantastic question. Feel free, guys, lots of questions. I love questions. Ask as many as you can. All right. So the Dream for All program must be combined with a first mortgage from the state. And so if you go to the state website, CalHFA.ca.gov, and right here, you're going to say, John, this section that you're pointing at right here says lenders and real estate agents. I'm a home buyer. Yeah, but there's no login here. The second button says rates and reservations. And right here, you say view today's interest rates, and bam, there's today's interest rates. And you look right down here for Dream for All conventional loan, and you look under standard rate lock, the first column, and it says your interest rate today would be a 6% interest rate. Now, I'm going to compare that for you to Quicken Loans, which is basically Rocket Mortgage. They're the same company. Rocket is the parent company. Quicken's actually the original name, and it changed to Rocket. So Quicken today is quoting a 30-year fixed at 6.375. And you got to be careful about interest rates. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors involved when you're looking at interest rates. The biggest smoke and mirrors is fees. Now, Quicken's Rocket is one of the most expensive out there. So it says right here, last updated today based on data from Rocket Mortgage. Even though it says Quicken, this is Rocket Mortgage. And the problem is you have a trade-off anytime you're doing a loan where you say, I either am paying a higher interest rate and low fees or higher fees and a lower interest rate. It's called buying points or buying out of points. Okay. So it's a teeter-totter. Well, what Quicken is saying, what Rocket is saying is, hey, our rate is 6.375 right here for a 30-year fixed. And you're seeing right here, CalHFA says, no. Today, this is today's rates as of effective right now. And today's rate is 6% for this program. So it's a super, super competitive interest rate on this program. But the other side of this is fees. Now, I said that you can normally expect to pay about 3% in total fees. That 3% includes 1% in an origination fee. The Dream for All program is around closer to 1.75 to 2% on average for the origination fee. But guess what Quicken is charging, what Rocket is charging? They don't tell you until that you go into the disclosures here, but it says, hey, this 30-year fixed rate, the interest rate of 6.375 is for a cost of 1.75 points. Now, I want you to plan in your head that there's about 2% of your purchase price in other fees, appraisal, credit report, title company's fees. You're going to pay for your first year's homeowner's insurance. You're going to pay for future property taxes. There's lots of fees that are involved there. So you're going to pay around 2% for all the miscellaneous fees. And then you're going to pay whatever the points or origination fees are on average. So Quicken Rocket prices their loans typically with around 2 points, between 1.75 and 2 points. That's actually the same as the Dream for All program. So you're paying about 1.75 to 2 points depending on the program. So Quicken is currently at a 6.375% interest rate, paying almost 2 points. Whereas the Dream for All program is at a 6% interest rate, paying a similar around 2 points. So it's actually a very, very aggressive program as far as how its pricing is concerned. Now, there's other lenders who are cheaper than Rocket. Rocket is the most expensive out there because Rocket has a huge advertising budget. They pay for Super Bowl ads, and they just bought Redfin, and they bought Mr. Cooper, and they bought everybody, okay? If you don't know who Mr. Cooper is, don't worry about it. But it's not the old TV show with the basketball guy back in the day. I think that was Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Different thing, okay? But I'm dating myself now. But the fact is that these interest rates are very competitive because Rocket's kind of on the higher end. CalHFA is aggressively in the middle. There's some lenders that'll be a little bit cheaper, but you get what you pay for as well. because the better the lender, the more they're paying their staff because they're getting quality staff. And so when you find the absolute cheapest lender that's out there, you're often getting what you're paying for because you're getting staff that isn't very seasoned and doesn't command a higher premium for what their knowledge level is. And so there's a trade-off there as well. All right, so let's go back to kind of the FAQs that we were going through right here. How do we apply for Dream for All? So we're kind of in that stage right now. So the first step is register for a voucher. So that's what starts next week on Tuesday. I'm doing a live stream tomorrow, next Tuesday at 11 a.m., where I am going to live with you for the first time, walk through the registration process. So I'm going to kind of put in fake information, get all the way to the end. I'm not going to hit submit, but you'll be able to watch and see how to do the registration. For some of you, you don't need that. For a lot of people, they've said, John, thank you so much for doing that 2 years ago. It really made me more comfortable with what I was going to see before I did it. So I'm going to be doing that next Tuesday at 11 a.m. as a live stream. You can watch it recorded on my YouTube channel, or we'll email you a copy of it. Get on our mailing list. You can do that by going to my Dream for All page, and all the way down here on the bottom, that's what you scan up here. And all the way down on the bottom, there is a subscribe button. So you can click here to subscribe and get our weekly emails. We send them out on Tuesdays. All right, so back to how the Dream for All program works. You need to get a pre-approval letter first, okay? So in order to get into the voucher portal, you have to have a pre-approval letter. You get your pre-approval letter by going right here. This is the same page that's up here. Oops, I got to kind of, you can see my hand way up there. All right, so it's the same page that's up here, up here, up here. Okay, it's backwards. There we go. Up there. I would be really horrible as a weatherman with those green screens where you got to stand sideways and point it where Idaho is. I would be horrible at that. Anyway, right here on this page that you scan, or that you scan the QR code, right here in the top right corner is Apply Now. You click there and it's going to take you to my portal. Within this portal, you can either start the application process right here on the website, or if you want to go mobile, you can put in your phone number and it'll send you the app, and then you can do it on your phone. Either way, this is step one, because you have to get the pre-approval letter before you're able to put yourself into the lotteries portal. Okay. Now, a few steps in the pre-approval process. Step number one is we need to collect the information. Step number two, we have to document it. I got to get pay stubs and W-2s and bank statements and your driver's license. And step number three is we have to pull credits. We do pull a soft credit. There is a cost for the soft credit report. We'll go through that with you. It's a nominal cost compared to what the true cost is of mortgage credit reports right now, but you won't. That's the only thing you will pay to us is the cost of the soft credit reports. Everything else, you pay nothing unless we get you into a home. Okay, so you need to do the pre-approval process. Once you have the pre-approval from us, that's when you're going to go into CalHFA's portal and register yourself. This is what starts next week on Tuesday. So next week on Tuesday, you're going to come here to CalHFA's website. You're going to go to homeowners and you're going to go to Dream for All. And right down here, it says application portal. It's grayed out right now, but on the right side is the application portal. Opens on Tuesday, February 24th at 9 a.m. Closes on Monday, the 16th at 5 p.m. So that's the next step you're going to take, but you've got to have the pre-approval letter first. Then they're going to do a randomized drawing. Now, let me give you the math. First of all, everybody says, John, what's the math? What are my chances? I don't know. But what I do know is what the numbers were back in 2024. There was no lottery in 2025. The last time we had one was in 2024, which is why it's critical, if you are interested in this program, to get in it now, because we don't know when the next lottery is going to be. So here's how it worked in 2024. There were 17,000 people that applied. And those 17,000 people, out of them, 1,700 got vouchers, 10%. 1 out of every 10 people that applied got a voucher. Sounds like horrible odds, actually way, way better than lottery. But 3 out of 10, another 30%, almost 5,000, over 5,000 people got on the waiting list. Over the next year and a half, all of those people on the waiting list got the chance to use the money. Now, they all didn't use the money, but all of them got a voucher and all of them had 6 months to shop for a home. So once you get your voucher, you are able to get a full pre-approval letter. So once you're selected, you work with me to get a full pre-approval letter. That just means we're updating your paperwork again. So the review we do now is kind of a light review. If you're qualified, you're great. If you're close to qualified, if you're self-employed and your income isn't there yet, but we got a game plan to show it being there next time you file your taxes, then we're going to get you into the lottery. If your credit is a little bit challenged and your 20 points too low, but we got a game plan to get you there, I'm going to let you get into the lottery. But then once you get selected, we have to qualify again right then. And that's when it matters, okay? The voucher you get gives you 90 days, 3 months to find a home. Now, historically has only been one round, but in 2024, all the people that got vouchers throughout the last year and a half, they got an extension. They got an extra 90 days to find a home. So somebody asked me today, John, am I going to be rushed to have to find a home? Well, yeah, you have 6 months. You don't want to delay. I had some clients that delayed and they missed out. I had some clients, I can remember 2 clients almost the same time in September of 2024. They were on the waiting list and they got their voucher in September. And they said, I'm going to start shopping in January. I think house prices are going to be lower. I feel like that's a better time to buy. I think interest rates are going to get better. And so they burned 4 months of their 6 months of their vouchers. And I said, I'm not sure that's a good idea. But they said, no, John, we're positive. I'm like, great. Hey, you're in charge. No problem. Well, it ended up that they couldn't find the home they wanted in the 6 months, in the 2 months that they had remaining. So you got to be aggressively looking. But here's the deal. If you end up running out of time, it didn't cost you anything. You didn't spend anything. There's no fee other than the initial credit report cost. And when you get to the next round, like I have people right now who were in the 2024 round, and they weren't able to use the money. And so we ended up putting them into the lottery again this time. So there's nothing precluding you from starting over. Obviously, it's luck whether you get selected. It's luck whether they have enough money to get through the whole waiting list. It's luck depending upon how many people ahead of you use their voucher versus let it expire, because there's a lot of people who let their voucher expire because they just decided, you know what, it's not a good time for me to buy, or my credit fell, or I got a job relocation, or any number of things. And so a lot of people get vouchers and then end up not using them. So once you're pre-approved, you have 90 days to find a home. And if you don't find a home in that time frame, you have another 90 days to keep shopping. Okay. You do have to be a first generation home buyer. This is a big one that a lot of people don't thoroughly understand. And so I want to make this clear. A first generation home buyer is different from being a first time home buyer. So a first time home buyer, everybody on the loan has to be a first time home buyer. And that means that you have not lived in a home owned by you or your spouse anytime in the last 3 years. So a first-time home buyer is a lower bar to step over. It just means you could own a property, but you can't have lived in it in the last 3 years, and you can't have lived in a property owned by your spouse. Everybody on the loan has to meet that criteria. The second one that's harder to do is one person on the loan must be a first-generation home buyer. And that is 3 things. They have to be, well, 2 things really, which is they have to have number 1, which is that one person has not been on title, held any ownership interest, been named on a mortgage on a permanent foundation and owned land. Meaning you can buy a manufactured home in the past and it doesn't preclude you as long as it was on rented land. That's kind of how that's what it's saying. Anytime in the last 7 years. So if your name was on anything mortgage related or on the title of a property, a rental property for a day, anything, you're not a first generation home buyer if that was the case anytime in the last 7 years. Now you owned something 10 years ago, that's okay. You co-signed with your parents on the property 20 years ago and they sold it 5 years ago, that's not okay. Because within the last 7 years, your name was on title of a home. So the key is, did you have your name on title for a home, on a mortgage, or anything at all in the last 7 years? And one of these 2 things, either number 2, your parents, biological or adoptive, do not currently own a home in the United States, or if they're deceased, did not own a home at the time of their death. I'm going to say that again. That one person who is the first generation person, both of their parents have to not own a home today, Or if they're either one of them or both are deceased, they could not have owned a home the day they passed away. Now, how is the state going to know that? Because they're going to dig. That's part of the process of why it took them in 2024 2 months to announce who the winners were. 2 months to announce who the winners were, because they do background checks by hiring a private investigation service, and they double check the information you provided. So you can say, hey, I don't know who my parents are. I've lost touch with them. We're estranged. I don't know if they own a home. That's fine. If that's the truth, you are certifying when you complete that application that you are entering all the information that you know, and you're attesting that it is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. But if they find that parent and they find out that parent is in fact a homeowner, then you're not going to get a voucher. They're not going to get mad at you. They're not going to kick you out. You didn't commit fraud because you didn't know. But what they're going to do is they're not going to select you. Even if they picked you, they're going to unpick you. Okay. You'll never know, but you'll know because, well, you won't know. But if you get a voucher, then you know you passed the background check. If you get on the waiting list, you'll know you passed the background check. If you are not selected, well, either you were unlucky or you didn't pass the background check. That's kind of how the process is going to go. So they're going to check your parents, or if you at any point in your life was placed in foster care or institutional care, then we don't care about the living situation of your parents. So it's kind of a automatic pass is if you spend any time in foster care or institutional care, then we don't care about your biological or adoptive parents. Okay. So to be clear, you are first generation if your parents do not currently own a home, or if your parents are deceased and did not own a home at the time that they passed, or you grew up in foster care, and you also haven't been on title or owned anything in the last 7 years. But if your parents currently own a home in the United States, or you've been on a mortgage in the last 7 years, you are not first generation. Now, only one person needs to be first generation. Okay. Not everybody needs to be first generation, but I did learn last week for sure, CalHFA is going to allow you to register next week and select multiple buyers as the first generation buyer. You'd say, John, why am I going to do that? Because what if at some point we need to remove one of you off of the loan? I have a story about a client. He and his brother were buying a home. Now they're brothers. Neither one of them have owned a home. They have the identical parents, and they had to select in 2024. CalHFA only allowed you to pick one person as a first generation person. So they just randomly picked one of the brothers. Well, it just so happened when they got a voucher, that brother's credit score fell, which means that brother couldn't be on the loan, because everybody on the loan needs to have a 680 credit score. Now, if you're under certain income limits, under 80% of the income limit for your county that you're buying in, then you don't have to have a 680. You can have a 660. But in general, most people require a 680. Well, this brother's score fell to 620. And so we took him off the loan, because you can remove borrowers, and they just bought a less expensive home, and the other buyer was buying by himself, except CalHFA stopped it in the end. And they said, you can't remove that buyer. We're like, what are you talking about? And they said, that buyer is our first generation buyer. They're brothers. Like, they're both they have the same parents. There's the background check done on one is the background check on the other. They're both first generation. And CalHFA said, nope. Our requirements are that you cannot remove the person that we did the background check on. And no matter what, even though common sense does not apply when it comes to politics or state legislation, but in this case, it really should have, and it still didn't. So now this year, they're going to allow you to select everybody that is first generation. That way, everybody gets the background check done. And that way, if one of you has to get removed from the loan, you can do that. Okay, so that's a huge win. Might not seem like a big deal. It'll seem like a big deal if you just check one of you and then something changes about your situation and you need to buy anyway, and you can't kick off the other person, because that one person was validated, was done the background check to make sure they were the first generation buyer. So it's critical that you select everyone that is first generation. Okay, remember, one buyer must be first generation. So what is shared appreciation? Essentially, you're paying back the states, and you're paying them back a percentage of what they invested into your property. By the way, guys, if you have questions, post them. That's what I'm here for. So I'm going to keep going through what I've got prepared. But if you have questions, post them. Now, What that means is they give you up to 20% of your home value, up maximum of $150,000. You make no monthly payments on that while you live in the home. As a matter of fact, that's not even phrased correctly. You make no monthly payments on it ever. You're allowed to move out after a year. Now, CalHFA doesn't want you to keep this assistance money if you move out, but they can't stop you. It's not written anywhere in the rules. And so some people, they say, John, I can't buy the house that I really want. And so I got to compromise. I got to buy a less expensive home right now, but I don't want to sell that home down the road because then I get rid of the Dream for All loan. And so it seems like I'm kind of stuck and I can't move out because I said it was going to be my primary home. Well, there's the catch. The rule says you must move in within 60 days of getting the keys, not even getting the keys, of closing escrow. Okay, so you close escrow and you become the owner. You must move in within 60 days and you must intend to occupy for 1 year. The word is not you must occupy for 1 year. The word is you must intend to occupy for 1 year. Well, John, what does intention mean? A lot of things. But intention in this case means, hey, what if your job transferred you from Los Angeles to Las Vegas? Well, then you can't live in the house in Los Angeles anymore. So you can turn it into a rental because you didn't know you were going to get the job transfer. Now, what if you ended up that the house was too small because you bought the house and 2 months later you had a baby and you couldn't fit in the one-bedroom home? Well, here's the deal. It takes a little longer than 2 months for that baby to show up. So you knew when you bought the house that you were having a baby. You knew that you were pregnant. Therefore, your intentions were misleading when you bought the house. If you're telling me you didn't know that a one-bedroom house wasn't going to fit your family of three, but you knew that you were going to have a family of three, that's where the F word comes in. Fraud, mortgage fraud. Okay. That's where you can start getting in trouble. But if you didn't plan for it, no big deal. You can move out before the end of the year. But if you did plan for it, wait for the year. Just wait for the year. Don't press your luck. I'm sure you're going to say, John, I've never seen them go after people for mortgage fraud. They have. Now, there's a lot more people that commit the crime than the people that are caught, but it's just like speeding. Just because you do it and you don't get caught doesn't make it legal. Okay. So stay for the year. It's no big deal. Move in within 60 days, stay for a year, and then you can move out and rent the property. Not a big deal. You must pay back when you sell the property or when you refinance the mortgage, although you do get a chance to refinance once without having to pay it back. I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. If you transfer title to anybody else, you have to pay it back when you pay off the first mortgage in 30 years, or when you pay off the principal amount of the Dream for All loan, you must pay back the appreciation. So, and there is a cap. The most you'll owe in appreciation is 2.5 times the original loan amount. So let's go through the math here. You buy a $500,000 home, you get $100,000 from the state, you pay your own closing costs, and therefore you have $400,000 of a loan. 5 years later, you sell the house for $640,000. Your balance has dropped. You've paid $30,000 down in your balance over the last 5 years, and you're paying back the state $128,000. Well, how did we come up with that number? Because you borrowed $100,000 and it went up by $140,000, and you pay back 20% of the $140,000 is $28,000 plus the $100,000 you originally borrowed. And here's how it breaks down: $100,000 is the original amount, $28,000 in appreciation. You're paying back $128,000. But here's what you keep. You keep 80% of the appreciation, which is $112,000. You keep the $30,000 that you'd paid down in the balance, so you keep $142,000. But remember, there's fees for selling a home. That comes out of your $142,000. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather walk away with $142,000 minus the fees than stay a renter and have my landlord make all that money. So that's really the key here. The point is you get to keep 80% of the appreciation while the Dream for All program keeps 20%. And that model recycles money for the state. Low-income buyers under 80% of the area median income, they get a couple of better deals. So they get regular income people, they pay back 20%. The people who are low income, they only pay back 15%. So instead of paying back here normal income, you pay back $128,000 when it goes up by $140,000. Here, they're only paying back $121,000 because their portion of the appreciation is cheaper. Okay. And then CalHFA recycles the funds. So when you pay it back, it goes back into the fund for future loans to people down the road. So it's supposed to be self-sustaining. Okay. Now, what if your home loses value? I get this question a lot. It's reality. Some homes have lost value over the last year as we've shifted from more of a seller's market to more of a buyer's market. And so you have to realize that, hey, if your original home value was $500,000 and you took out a $100,000 Dream for All loan, okay, you sell the home for $450,000, you still owe the $100,000. And you'd say, wait a second, John, how's that going to work? Because if I sell it for $450 and I got to pay back the $100, that only leaves $350. Well, if your current mortgage is more than $350, then that's what's called a short sale. So you're going to be in trouble if that's what happens. And so that is a real situation, no matter what program you're using. If you're putting a small amount of down payment and the values go down, you can be underwater. But here's the deal. Your payment's never going to change. So stick it out if you can. Find a way to stay in the property. Don't sell if prices have dropped. There's never been a 10-year period of time where prices were lower 10 years later than they were at the beginning of that time frame. Even from 2006 to 2016, prices were still higher in 2016 than they were in 2006. And 2007 started the biggest decline in home prices that we have seen in modern history. And yet prices still were above where they were at in 2016 compared to where they were in 2006. So now, even other dips has taken a lot faster of a time to recover. What's my point? The point is, if you're buying a home to turn around and sell in a year or two, this is a horrible idea. Okay, because even if the home price goes up some, you're paying fees to sell the house, you're paying back portion of that appreciation to the state. It's going to be hard to break even or get money back out of it. Okay, but if you're planning on staying for it 5 to 10 years or keeping it as a rental after the first year, this is a great program. Okay, the Dream for All program can be used for down payments, it can be closing costs, it can be for permanent rate buy downs, but it can't be used for paying off your debt and it can't be used for cash back to you. Now, you can refinance once without paying back the Dream for All money. So in order to do that, you have to do what's called a limited cash out, which means you cannot pull any cash out of the home. It's kind of a bad phrase because they say limited cash out, but basically it's the opposite is unlimited cash out, I guess. But it basically means no cash out. The only money you're allowed to add to the loan amount is the fees for the refinance. You can do that one time. Here's the pickle. When do you do it? Do you do it as soon as rates drop enough to save you some money? Do you wait longer so that you don't, because you only have one bullet in that chamber. You only have one opportunity to refinance. Otherwise, the second time that you go to refinance, you have to pay back the money to the state, which means you're not going to save any money per month. Now, there's a really good strategy that a lot of my clients are employing that use Dream for All. I've helped 57 people so far in the last 2.5 years use the Dream for All program. And that is a lot. Most lenders might have done 0, 1, 2, maybe 3 in that timeline. I've helped 57. So I'm an expert in this program. And a lot of those clients are waiting for rates to drop between 1.5% and 2% over what they bought the house at, because at that level, they can refinance, include the Dream for All loan and the appreciation into the brand new loan, and their payment stays the same. To me, that's the pot of gold that you're going after. Don't buy a house now if you can't afford the monthly payment. Do not buy the house if you're saying the only way I can afford this is if I can at least refinance in a year or two. Don't buy the house with a temporary rate buy down saying, well, I'm positive I can refinance by the time this 2-year rate buy down expires. If you don't know what a temporary buy down is, I've got it in my video library. Check it out. It's a great program, but it's horrible if that's the only way you can afford the payment. So be very, very careful. Okay. So you can refinance, but you can only refinance once. I get a lot of questions. Can I combine this with My Home or other down payment assistance programs? So My Home is a program from the same state agency, CalHFA. And the answer is no, you cannot combine it with My Home. Why would you need to? Like, it includes everything that you need. And maybe you'd say, yeah, I want to use one of those programs so I can pay the closing costs. I wish you could. You technically can combine it with other down payment assistance programs, but most of them won't do it. And there's 2 reasons why they won't. First and foremost, because the Dream for All loan has to be the second mortgage on the home, which means that the other assistance money has to be a third lien on the property. Most of them won't do that. The other thing they won't do is they won't finance behind a second mortgage that grows. Well, John, what do you mean by it grows? Because your Dream for All loan, your balance that you owe them increases over time, not the actual balance, but the payoff amount. And so the person who's third in line won't get their money until the first person and the second person in line get paid. And they don't really know their place in line because the second mortgage gets bigger as the equity goes up. And so it's really important to understand. It's very, very rare that we compare these with any other program, but I'll always try. Okay. But here's the other reminder. The Dream for All loan must be paired with the Dream for All conventional loan. So if you say, John, I don't want to do this Dream for All conventional loan, can I do some other program through another bank? The answer is no. The Dream for All loan is only tied, the assistance money is only tied with doing the actual big loan through the state of California as well. All right, where am I at? I'm right here. Too many tabs open. Okay, well, I have to pay it back later. Yes, you will. And I have a really cool payback calculator. And actually, let's take a look at the payback calculator here. Hold on. Oh, let's zoom back out a little bit. So this is my super cool payback calculator. And so this is also part of my FAQ. So as you go in here, you can click on resources. Once you have the calculator, register for my calculator. Once you register, you can click this button right here. It will open up the calculator right here. Create your free account. You can run some really rough numbers, but create your free account. When you create your free account, you're able to see a lot more detail. Okay. You're able to see what all of your options are. And I'll show you that how the calculator works in just a second. But what this is your repayment calculator. So this basically says, hey, how much am I selling the house for? How much did I borrow? What's my interest rate? How big was the second loan? And then am I selling or am I refinancing? And so this goes through and it shows you all the different scenarios. I created the calculator. It is for estimating purposes only, but I played with a lot of the numbers and I feel very, very confident in them. You can look at how long it takes for me to, so if you said, hey, I'm going to sell the house and I'm going to sell the house in 1 year and the house value goes up by the house value appreciates by 3% per year, but it's going to cost me 6% to sell the house. Then I've lost $17,000. Okay. You see how that works? Now, if it happens that the house value goes up by more than that, then awesome, but you're still losing money. Like even if the house, by the way, the average home appreciation in the state of California over the last 40 years is 6%. My calculator defaults to 3%. So I'm assuming a smaller amount of increase in value, but it's about how long you keep the property. So if you keep it for 3 years and the average appreciation is 6%, and then you sell it, you've made $66,000. And that's after paying the cost of selling the home. But if the appreciation is only 3%, now you're looking at $22,000, but that's $22,000 more than what you would have made if you were a renter. But here's where the numbers get real. Okay. You keep the property for 10 years. The appreciation is only 3% and you made $189,000. You bought the house for $600,000. It went up to $806,000 in that 10-year time frame. And if home values went up like they have been on average, again, some big increases, some negative losses, most on average at 6%. If the home value went up by 6% over 10 years, you made $388,000. That's actually a very convenient number. The reason why I say that is because a study was done a couple of years ago on what the average net worth is of a homeowner. And the average net worth of a homeowner in the United States is $392,000. That includes your 401k, that includes the equity in your home, that includes your stocks and your checking account and your savings account. You know what the average the average net worth of a renter is? $11,500. Now that includes everything, but you don't have a home that you have equity in. Some people are renters and they have a lot of money in their 401k. They have a lot of money in stocks. There's a lot more renters that have none. And it's hard. This is where the long-term benefit of home ownership is amazing. Now, wouldn't it be amazing if you could get all of the appreciation? Because here, the total appreciation was $474,000, and you're only walking away with $388,000. You can complain and say, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I only got $388,000. I could have gotten $475,000. That John King guy sold me a bill of goods. Or you could be a renter and have nothing. The choice is yours. Now, I'm not telling you this is a perfect program, but I'm telling you that this program is more perfect than the option of staying a renter, as long as you plan on keeping the home for a long enough period of time. Because that same situation, if you sell in a year, you're losing money. So it's very, very important to understand that. All right, so let's dive into the actual calculator. When you get in here and you run the calculator, you're going to start with a wizard, and that wizard is going to walk you through information, collecting information about your income. Okay, Norman, I see your question. I'll get to questions in just a minute. If anybody has any other questions, I'm going to try and wrap up around 8 o'clock. So I got about 9 minutes left. I'm going to take 3 or 4 minutes right here explaining the calculator, and then I'll get to Norman's questions. And if you guys have other questions, post them now, and then I'll stay as long as I need to answer those questions. All right, so you're going to fill out right here, and you're going to be in the My Info section, and you're going to put in how much income do you make. And so in this case, the client made $99,000. We're going to put in how much debts, and they've got a car at $455, another car at $600 a month. So this is a random example. And you can put in your credit score, and we're going to say the credit score is 700. And now we're going to go back to the calculator. And the calculator is going to say, okay, hey, I'm buying in Sacramento County. What's the maximum that I can afford? Well, right here, it tells you the most we will. This is not what you can afford. This is what I will let you spend. Those are two totally different things. Do not take this number and say, oh, John says I can afford to spend that much. Because maybe you're going to say, well, John, I actually sold those cars. And so I don't have that car payment anymore. And this one belongs to my sister, and she makes the payments. And so I don't have to count those. And so technically, I could qualify for a $4,000 a month payment. But I don't know what you spend in entertainment. I don't know what you spend for food or clothing or anything else. Only you know how much money you really have. But understand, sometimes you got to tighten the belt. Sometimes you have to take a shift in your priorities of where you spend money for a period of time. But here's the deal with home ownership. Home ownership, mortgage payments stay the same or go down over time. Rent stays the same or goes up over time. And your income continues to go up over time. So you are when you're looking at income, we always get pay raises, or at least we should, hopefully. And so you're going to continually get pay raises. And so that income helps to make the mortgage payment feel cheaper. And so you got 3 scenarios here. What's the most I qualify for? A specific purchase price or a specific payment. And so it starts with the max I qualify for. And it tells you right here, your lowest amount of cash to close. This means you're including the closing costs in the loan. You're buying a house for $641,000, but you're borrowing more than that. Okay, because you're borrowing enough to cover the closing costs in there as well. Your payment is $41.21. Now, if you paid your own closing costs, about 4%, $27,000, and you'd be at around a $672,000 price, the most you can put out of pocket is 5% of your own funds. You're not for down payment, and then you can pay the closing costs. You're not allowed to put more out of your pocket. And so that's what the scenario on the right represents. So these are your 3 scenarios, and you can say, well, I want to know what it would cost to buy a $750,000 home. Here you go. A $750,000 home would be $48.22, but you don't qualify based on the numbers you gave me. A $750,000 home with 30 grand is $45.97, and a $750,000 home with the most out of pocket is $43.72. So this breaks down all of your requirements for you so that you can play with the numbers. You can say, well, wait a second. What if interest rates drop to 5% between now and when I use my voucher? Well, now you technically qualify for this option because the payment would be $4,020 if the rate was at 5. But the rate's not at 5. This updates every day. My team updates it in the morning for what that day's interest rates are. You cannot lock your interest rate until you get an offer accepted on your home. All right, so let's go back and let's answer Norman's question. And then if anybody else has questions, now is the time to post it. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again about what the next steps are to get in. So Norman says, my wife has a 665 credit score, but she is the first generation home buyer. I have a $750 credit score, but my parents own a home and sold 4 years ago. Do we have options for this program, or both 6-figure? Okay, so here's the good news, Norman. Your parents owning a home 4 years ago isn't a disqualifier. It is not a disqualifier. So I'm going to take you back here, and I'm going to go to my calculator. We're going to go to the FAQs, and I'm going to scroll down here to say, what is a first-generation home buyer? It is that you have not owned a home in the last 7 years, but it is your parents don't own a home right now. So Norman, unless you owned a home in the last 7 years, this does not, unless you co-signed with your parents or your name was on title to their home, you are a first generation home buyer because you don't get this. You are not, you haven't owned anything in 7 years. And for your parents, it's only right now. So yeah, Norman says, yeah, oh, right now. Yes. So your parents, it's only about their ownership right now. Here's the most important thing I will tell everybody. Don't presume you don't qualify for any of these reasons. My calculator is amazing. It's going to give you really, really good numbers, and you're going to run the math, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, we don't qualify because we make too much money. Guess what? Income is like Legos. I can repiece them together a lot of times. I really am an expert at this. Like, I'm not kidding you. I'm really, really good at it. And I don't say that to be boastful. I'm saying it factually. I really understand this program. I really understand mortgage math. It's a whole different kind of math, but I really, really understand it. And I want to be your lender. I am interviewing to be your lender, even if this program isn't the right program for you. I will tell you, I talked to a client today. He called me about Dream for All, and then he called me back and he says, actually, I just got an offer accepted on a home. He's buying a home in the Bay Area, $1.3 million in the South Bay, San Francisco Bay Area. And he said, John, the lender I'm using says I have to put 15% down. I have that money, but I want to renovate the home. And I don't want to use that money if I don't have to. And so do you have any down payment assistance options? Well, first of all, he can't get Dream for All right away because he is in contract right now. So I showed him another option where he can basically have, instead of putting $200,000 out of his pocket, he can buy a $1.3 million home with only $50,000 out of his pocket, including the closing costs. And if a seller's willing to help with closing costs, we could have made that almost zero. Okay. This is the power of the programs that I have available. So don't assume, oh, I can't qualify. Oh, I can't get any down payment assistance. Oh, I make too much money. There's ways that we can play with the numbers. There's ways that we can play Tetris, play with Legos and mix and match things. And I am an expert at that. And I want the opportunity to help you out. So here's your next step. You need to scan this QR code. This QR code is going to take you to this page right here. Oh, show me. Go ahead. It's going to take you to this page right here. And you're going to click right on the top and you're going to click apply now. That is the start of the process. Once you click apply now, it's going to take you to my application page. This is how we need to get you pre-approved and into the lottery. So start with this process. Time is running out. Like, you're going to say, oh my gosh, John, you're making a big deal out of this. We got a month. Like, we have until the 16th of March. Guess what? I've already gotten inquiries from 250 people in the last, 75 days? 45 days, 48 days, since January 1st. In 48 days, I've gotten 250 people reaching out to me saying, John, can you explain to me the Dream for All program and help me to get pre-approved? That's just the number of people who have reached out to me. I have a team of 7 of us. We're getting to these very, very quickly, but I'll tell you that on March 10th, it's going to take a lot longer. And so you don't want to wait until the last minute to find out that, hey, I need to get something extra in order to make this work. Okay, so Norman asked a really, really good question. Thank you, Norman. Let me pull the question up here. Should me and my wife apply separately or together? Together. So here's a weird thing. CalHFA has made it very, very clear. They do not want married people or people who are intending to live in the house together to register separately for vouchers. They basically consider that fraud. They say, look, if we find that we've got, now I know that you may not be asking the question this way, so I'm not saying you're trying to commit fraud, but it was a good reminder to tell everybody about this. So CalHFA says, if you're trying to buy one house, you get one entry into the lottery. Don't split up and say, well, I'm going to get an entry for each of us, and that way we double our chances to win. By the way, my dad always said that the most beneficial lottery ticket to buy is the second one, because it is the single biggest increase in your odds. You've literally doubled your odds. You buy the third lottery ticket, a raffle ticket, doesn't increase your odds anywhere near as good as buying the second one. So I was taught from a kid, never buy one raffle ticket, never buy 3, always buy 2. But in this case, my dad's logic does not apply because you cannot separate to apply into the lottery. But Norman, what I think you're saying is, hey, well, if my wife and I make too much money, and he's saying, no. I know, I'm not saying that's what you were doing, okay? But what I think you're saying is, hey, my wife and I make too much money together. And so I said, hey, I've got Legos I can play with. Give me all the Lego pieces. So apply together, disclose all of your income, and then I'll look at it saying, oh, I don't want to use that part. Let's take your wife off of here. Let's do it this way. And I'm surgical at going through your scenarios and help you figure out the right way to qualify. That is where I am an expert. Please give me all of the information, all of the tools, which means tell me everything, and then I'll be able to discern which one of those items we're going to include in the official application and which ones that we are not. So that is the next step, guys. Start the application process, scan the QR code that is up here. Finally got it right. Anyway, up here, I'm not the weatherman that understands the green screen. Scan that QR code or type in californiadreamforall.info. Click apply now. Operators are standing by. I'm just kidding. Everybody's asleep right now. Well, they're not asleep, but they're home. I give them a little time off. But please understand, I'm interviewing for not just the Dream for All program, but any program. I pretty much have access to every program that's out there, and I am an expert in mortgage math and finding ways to strategically help you accomplish your goals. If you want to talk first, same link, click book a call. We can schedule a call. I've got time tomorrow. I've got time on a Friday, Monday. Set up a time where we can talk and we can spend 15, 20, 30 minutes going through your individual scenario to help you make sure that it's going to work for you. Really appreciate everybody listening tonight. Please share this with anybody that you know. Share my information with them. Share this link up above and help them to make their dream come true as well. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Join me every Friday. I do a live stream about what's just happening in the mortgage market. Mondays at noon, I do a live stream about the Dream for All program every week. And then this coming Tuesday at 11 a.m., I'm doing a live stream on how to register into the Dream for All portal because it opens Tuesday morning at 9. And then next Wednesday night and each of the Wednesdays up until March 16th, I'll be joining you guys again if you want to come back. Each session is a little bit different, but it's all kind of the same thing. But send your friends next time. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.